Hi there, my name is Michael Scott Forehand, and this is the Financial Focus with Scott Forehand. Let's go ahead and get started for today. The title of our presentation today is Where Strategy Meets Reality, Money, Risk, and Leadership. One of the biggest challenges in modern financial planning is that money's become fragmented. People tend to approach decisions in silos, investment in one conversation, insurance in another, debt and mortgages somewhere else, and now digital assets and crypto completely on their own island. But real life doesn't work in silos. Cash flow, leverage, risk, taxes, opportunity cost, timing, these are always interacting, and whether we account for them or not. So when planning ignores these connections, people end up with strategies that look intelligent in isolation, but unfortunately will underperform as a system. In the early stages of wealth building, most people are rewarded for growth. They borrow, they invest, they take calculated risks, they focus on accumulation, or at least we hope they're calculated risks. But as complexity increases, business ownership, high income, family responsibility, market volatility, tax exposure, all these questions change the equation. It's no longer just how do I grow? That's the easy part. It becomes how do I manage risk across all these assets? How do I improve liquidity and control? How do I use leverage intentionally instead of reactively? And how do I build a financial system that can adapt as conditions change? This is where real planning begins, because the most effective strategies don't eliminate risk, they allocate it intelligently. That requires understanding multiple worlds: traditional finance, insurance-based strategies, debt, financing, and now emerging assets like crypto. It all requires understanding of how emotion, timing, and access to capital affect outcomes just as much as they affect performance. Which brings me to today's guest. Paul Bein is someone who understands money from every major angle. One of my great friends, and someone I respect a tremendous amount. Paul's a general life broker with vast experience across life insurance strategies, annuities, indexed universal life programs, infinite banking concepts. But Paul's perspective doesn't stop with insurance. He's also a crypto specialist, which gives him a front row seat to how digital assets fit or don't fit inside responsible long-term planning. In addition, Paul has vast experience originating mortgages, giving him a deep understanding of leverage, interest, debt structure, and how financing decisions quietly shape financial outcomes over decades. Paul has built an agency here at Symmetry Financial Group, which means he doesn't just understand theory, he understands leadership, he understands scale, he understands compliance, and finally, he understands what it takes to serve clients consistently at a high level. And beyond business, Paul is also a founding member of Victor Alpha Solutions, an organization devoted to supporting U.S. military veterans by bringing structure, education, and opportunity to those who have served. So the combination of these different skill sets that Paul has learned and grown over time matters. Insurance, investments, crypto, debt, leadership, mission. Paul doesn't approach planning from a product lens. He approaches it from a systems lens. So today's conversation isn't about hype. It's about clarity. It's about how different financial tools interact, where people get it wrong, and how to think more strategically about money in a complex world. Paul brings experience, balance, and real world insight to that conversation. And I'm really excited to have him here. So Paul, welcome to the show, brother. Nice to see you.
Thank you. I hope I live up to the great words you shared about me.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, this is all from you. This is stuff I've learned about you and know about you over the years. So yeah, this is I have no doubt that you're going to be able to live up. So
Thank you.
let's
Truly
go ahead.
blessed.
Let's go ahead and jump in. So first things first, let's talk big picture. So, Paul, you've worked across the insurance industry, the mortgage industry, and now in the crypto investment industry. How did seeing money from these different angles, using these different lenses, change the way or modify the way you think about financial planning as a system?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, there is no cookie cutter approach for clients.
Right.
It's really looking at, you know, we're sometimes it's really dealing with their philosophies and re-educating and providing that financial literacy for families and individuals and what their end results. Sometimes people don't want to put all the, building a train track is all the rails in place to get to that destination. They just want to get to the destination as fast as possible. And I think you have to put some
Right.
safety measures in place. So yeah, there. I know we can get into this a little bit more and as we go along with this. But yeah, to me, it's a vital part, really looking at the bigger picture where everyone's at, look at really understand their psychology of, what they know and what they don't know, and then marrying that all together so we can have a balanced portfolio. And there's balance means different things and, with individuals and, that starts out with cash flow, debt and figure out how we can eliminate some of the challenges that they're having now so we can free up assets to grow their portfolio. Sometimes you have to take a step back to move
Yep.
two
Sometimes you got
steps
to take a
forward.
step back and that's something that as we both grow in our financial practices here and we start talking to younger and younger people, you keep seeing this mentality where the people they don't want the labor pains. They just want the baby, right? And that it doesn't work like that. You've got to have time. So one of the things that I talked about just a minute ago was about the silo mentality. So when people are looking at or struggling with how to connect different types or styles of investments, include the insurance programs, what you just mentioned, debt, how to eliminate the debt or use debt as a leverage. And finally, how do you get involved in the digital when you have people that are trying to break it down and actually coalesce all of it? What is something that you do, or how do you help people break that silo mentality and bring it into one all-encompassing, coherent strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing is understand if you're building a portfolio and, you have to think of kind of building a house. You have to have foundational things in place.
Right,
What's, big question is what's the point of, chasing an interest rate when you're dealing with 20 to 30% interest rates on debt? How to
right,
minimize that so we can free up assets because that's going to be a lagger on their whole portfolio. The other
right,
side is, and this is a real question, how do you view life insurance? To me, my through that educational process with clients is, you know, they're the biggest detriment to any portfolio is their liabilities. So how do we leverage liabilities without, breaking the bank?
right.
Insurance is,
Love
the
that.
simplicity is life insurance is a vital part of it. And that's like, it doesn't have to be a ton, but let's make sure, all the efforts we put in place and, due to
Right,
death, disability or sickness, that goes all out the window. And then we're starting square one,
right,
10, 15 years down the road because we had to use all those assets to fund, medical expenses and so forth.
right.
So
Yeah.
there's a psychology behind it.
I
Absolutely,
love
Scott.
that, man. So, what you're saying is really nobody knows when they're going to pass. You can make whatever plan you want to make, but in
Right.
the end, you got to have a plan B and a plan C. And if you don't, and that unexpected tragedy happens, not only did your plan go out the window, but now you've increased the the negative leverage that your family's going to have because you didn't adequately prepare. So that's certainly one of those places where insurance needs to come into that conversation.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been talking with a lot of other people I've been interviewing recently is we will talk to a lot of clients and they're gonna they watch some TikTok video that said, hey, everybody should have an IUL, and then you got to explain to a 73-year-old man that probably an IUL isn't the thing you need right now. So we work with a lot of tools, we have a lot of options, How do you keep the conversations in a planning first perspective as opposed to a product driven perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. TikTok provides a lot of insight and true or false. I mean, it is providing information to individuals, and you have to, disseminate and really understand what that message is telling you. And it's not cookie cutter. Same thing. You
Right,
know, my conversations with clients to help them. What is that? If you saw an IUL, what do you want that to do for you? And then
right,
we'll say, let's look at. And then I'm going back on. Do you want it for coverage or do you want it for growth? And what do you have in place for growth? One, and then two is what does your liabilities look like? Because we can have the best made plan. Back to what I originally said, it really doesn't really matter because it's not, if, it's when something happens, are you
right,
prepared?
right. So, one of the things you just mentioned, which is really cool because it leads right into this next question, it's about planning and control, right? So controlling your capital. So an infinite bank is something that's often misunderstood. People don't understand how to correctly structure them. They don't understand how to correctly use them. And as a capital control piece, it is superior for different kinds of things. So how do you explain infinite banking as a capital control strategy rather than an investment replacement strategy?
Yeah, and I guess this kind of goes hand in hand with the previous question because when people explain what they want their IUL, they're really explaining an infinite bank. The
Right.
funny thing is,
Usually, yeah.
yeah, the liquidity and access. Um, to me, capital is everything. There are philosophies of using, infinite banking. We can probably get into a little bit more in this conversation what that is, but it's control of capital, like you said, and have the ability to have liquidity when you need it. You don't know when those opportunities that may come up. First and
Right.
foremost is having, leverage and being able to produce capital funding things versus going through financing aspects and using third parties to leverage it, and you're susceptible to whatever rates and the cost of borrowing money could potentially be. And through an infinite banking program, you have full control. For example,
Love that.
if you're in the real estate market, you know, you have to leverage third parties. If you're investing in property that's not primary residence, you're subject to current interest rates. But how cool would it be to have at least a proportion of that funding and get a more favorable interest rate? And now you can invest in your capital. If it's a short-term turn, you invest in that, you put that, repay yourself inside of an infinite bank, and you capitalize of all the gains of that sale of that piece of property. And that's just specifically to real estate, but it's not specific to any asset. It's just the same psychology
Right.
behind it.
Real estate's the widget. The widget
Yep.
could be I'm not investing in real estate. I'm investing in a new Dunkin' Donuts. I'm investing in
Yeah.
my daughter's college career, whatever. There's all kinds of things you can use the money in there, and there's no restrictions on it. And if you really think about it, if I have to go out and borrow money, and I like to use the real estate market because I used to flip houses. So,
Yeah.
when I
Me too.
had a hard money lender that would give me any loan I needed for any property I wanted to flip as long as I could show that it was going to work correctly, he'd give me 16 points. Okay,
Yeah.
not bad. I 16% on signature, go out and do whatever. That's not bad. But if you have an investment like an infinite bank, your net cost in that loan is only 2.5%. And
Correct.
that's awesome. And you can do that again on signature. Nobody's going to tell you no, it's yours. All right. So let's switch gears a little bit. So we talked about infinite banking and using life insurance because that's what an infinite bank is usually. It's life insurance. IULs are life insurance. Let's talk about a little bit different. Let's talk about a cash contract. So with a cash contract, what I'm really talking about is that it's an annuity, but it's not the kind of annuity where you lose money. Not like a variable annuity that has super high fees. I'm talking about low fee or no fee annuities, fixed indexed annuities, those kinds of things.
Right.
So when you're using that annuity as a tool, that's all it is. It's a financial tool. When you're using it as a tool inside the broader financial systems that you create, where do people misuse them? Where do you see that? Where's the pitfall for people?
Yeah. I mean, they misuse them because they think it's a liquid vehicle.
Ah,
to get money access early. And honestly, in any portfolio, if someone, whoever you're working with, is not asking you what the long-term horizons of whatever asset you're working with is not in
Right.
that conversation, that could be a problem because it's not identifying what your needs and uses of that money is, short term, mid-term, and long term. And in
Right.
an annuity, it's a great vehicle specifically for a certain need. That's long term, something that you don't need tomorrow, especially if you're age. Now, if you're older and take assets and you're gonna, annuitize it or have some kind of disbursement out of it, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you can self-insure, through annuity, for life insurance reasons. There's so many
Right.
different aspects, but
Yep.
time is everything. If you're 30 years old, probably not a good idea unless you're creating a private pension and
Yeah.
you're going to shelf it for a long time.
Right. All right. So now let's go into the what I really call it was the recent wild west of investments, the crypto, right? So, and Paul, I've known you for a while with this stuff, and you've been great, and you've given me some good advice, especially with this arena. So, how do you help clients think about crypto responsibly as part of a plan and not as a gamble?
I mean, what's your time horizon and what do you want to access your asset? And are you prepared to liquidate it when it hits a peak and then it hits a ceiling and then you want to access it? And how much education do you want to put inside of it? Because just like anything, I mean, there's no secret, precious metals are on a run right now, you
Yep.
know, and there's money moving, markets are suffering because money's moving into that. And so is crypto market. But, this is the psychology for everybody. And 95% of the people have this challenge is they buy high and sell low. So when crypto is moving, people are buying. And honestly, when people are buying into crypto, those are exit strategies for the people that bought early and are now moving out.
Yep.
So same in precious metals or a similar thing. But the biggest thing is, the psychology that I use for crypto is that is it a tangible asset? Is it attached to a company? Is there a tangible use for this crypto that's going to be long term that could be sustainable, not a flash in a pan, not a penny stock. I mean, there's a lot of similarities to the markets, in regards to risk on crypto versus penny stocks or small cap stocks. I mean, small cap stocks are highly volatile, but if you have and this is no no financial advice whatsoever. I'm
Right. Right.
just per my personal experience, but
This is an entertainment podcast. We're not giving financial
exactly,
advice. There's our
exactly.
disclaimer, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, but it's how you look at things. And my job is just to give, perspective on what the cryptos looks like. And, having someone that has experience, it can just the simple things of how to set up an exchange account so you can understand what's safe for you. And, you know, but I would recommend doing some education before you invest in anything that
Yep.
you're unclear of. Don't invest because it's a big shiny object. Invest
Yep.
in it because you understand this, what the big picture for Bitcoin. That's a common subject, and you have
Yep.
XRP and other companies like that. I'm not endorsing any of them, but those are big conversational pieces. And what is the usage of those items? Just like a stock, it's a
Right.
valid company, and what that company is about, and do you like what they're doing in their current environment?
Right. I yeah. Good stuff. All right. So Paul, you came from another business, and you were extremely successful in that other business, and then you came here, and you're no not hiding anything. You're part of our team, and you're part of Symmetry Financial Group. You have demonstrated yourself to be one heck of a leader. And what leadership lesson most impacted you in how you serve clients today?
Well, I'll share this is humility is always important in learning.
There you go.
Um, and because I came from a vast, different segment of the industry, it was always financial. And, I knew I had to be a teacher before I'd be a student before I become a teacher.
Sure.
And I had to, practice what I preached and, understood all the, mechanism. And this is across the board in any kind of field you go into.
Sure.
And then growing into a leader, what is my goal and vision was to, build an agency based on the current metrics and dynamics of what Symmetry offered, but it allowed me to touch. I want to have a bigger footprint, and the only way to do that is empower other people to be successful, and that's ultimately what my mantra is for Symmetry and my agency is to empower individuals to be the greater versions of themselves.
Right. Okay. I want to switch gears again. Let's talk about Victor Alpha Solutions. So you're a founding member of Victor Alpha Solutions. Why is that mission important to you? What does it do for you? How does it influence your approach to money and leadership?
Yeah, that's there's so many different directions in that question, but the simplicity of is giving back to those individuals that made the greatest sacrifice
Love it.
to serve our country and be willing to, lay their lives down to serve others.
Yep.
Man, I could hope to be as good as that. And then firsthand experience with my aunt, my uncles, my dad, my grandfathers, and they all served in major wars. And, you know, I think veterans get short end of stick sometimes, and if I could provide a little bit insight and financial literacy to help them get a little bit ahead and give them a kickstart in their financial futures, preparing for purchase of a house, putting plans in place that they can, I don't know, potentially create a legacy or
Right.
do better for their family and not deal with the financial burdens because nobody's trained in school, at least I wasn't, how to you know manage a checkbook, how to invest
Yeah.
in the markets, so
Right.
forth.
Yeah.
And
I
so we had
think
to be taught.
from that perspective, the one thing we're taught is from the banks, especially if you go to college. And when you go to college and you're walking across the quad, you're going to pass three or four different banks that are out there trying to give you a credit card to quote unquote get your credit started, right? So we are taught how to get into debt. We are not taught how to get out of debt, or really, and part of what we do is how to manage debt. So, and that leads us to the next question. What's one mistake you consistently see when people try to manage insurance, debt, and alternative assets separately when they're trying to manage everything in its own silo?
The biggest thing is robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah,
They're
love
taking
it.
money, pulling something from something else to, chase that shiny penny and not really taking a I mean, listen, you only have you can only stretch a dollar so far. We managed through infinite banking to multiply that dollar, and that's a whole
Right.
different another conversation. But you don't know what you don't know, and ignorance is and pride is the most expensive
Yep.
trait that you could own, and I don't mean it in an insulting way, but if you can get listen, you don't have to take anybody's advice, but if you can listen to other people and get a different perspective and then make your own conclusion, you know, you'll do a lot better. This is not all mainstream for education. Mainstream is all about the flashy things. Silver's going popped 100, gold's
Yep.
almost 5,000.
I work
But
hard. I deserve this.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah,
I'll just get
exactly.
another credit card with 0% interest and transfer the balance. Nope. That is
Yeah.
not the way to do
And
this.
then and then 12 months later, that debt becomes
Yep.
20%
Yep.
and you haven't had a solution. And those are short-term fix, which is great. And that could be part of your strategy. But consult with someone that listen, wisdom. I mean, I just turned 60. Wisdom is from me screwing up a lot of things and personally making mistakes and educating myself over time. And not that you have to be 60 to give advice, but you know, I'm a little bit seasoned, so I've experienced things firsthand that I can speak from from that position.
Seasoned, I like that word. I'll say experienced. I'm going to use that
Yeah.
word.
I
Right. All right.
appreciate that.
All right, Mr. Bein. Let's see. We're getting close to the end here. So this is for not necessarily lay people or people that are looking for the education that we offer, but this is for people that are already in the industry. For the advisors that are listening to this. What's
Yep.
one area that you think most advisors should understand better in order to serve their clients more holistically?
I speak from a point when I used to be Series 7 licensed, is looking at everything as a whole.
Yep.
Most time debt is overlooked unless we've used strategies that, you know, found lending programs to pay off debt and then use the remaining assets, whatever's freed up to invest in. But really looking at that big picture and initially I never talked about life insurance. We talked about penalties or I'm sorry, final expense. And now I look at life insurance as there's so many tax benefits to it.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be your primary source of investing, but that's called a blend, is to have it diversified. And
Yep.
you got high risk, crypto's high risk. You have the markets, precious metals part of that as well. And life insurance can be that safe place that you can have, decent growth, but you don't have to worry about those, ups and down swings of, the highs and lows, and it can actually balance out your portfolio.
Right on. All right, last question, then we're going to get out of here.
Yes, sir.
Here we go. If someone could change, and we're speaking realistically about potential clients, okay? If someone could change one mindset about money today, one mindset, one thought, what would have the biggest long-term impact?
Honestly, over the years, is focusing on, you know, how is your spending of debt and, debt costing your portfolio?
Right,
Um, and that, to me, that should be, ground zero of, where you need to start, and then build from there. And it's not that you can't have other, vehicles working for you, but yourself, I mean, your just self-destruction is due to your debt and creating more. To your point that you shared with, college students, they're inundated with debt, and that's a recipe for failure because they're
yep,
already, caught in a bad spot. And if we can change that, one person at a time, and just focus on debt a little bit, you know, a little bit, take a different lens to it and look at it a little bit differently, I think a lot of individuals be, sitting in a better
right.
position 5, 10 years down the road.
I've heard a number of people say the number one detractor from solid retirement is debt service, and I don't disagree with that. Now,
Yeah.
there is a such thing as good and bad debt, okay, but really, once you get to the point where you're not able to invest in your future because you're spending so much money just on interest service on your debt, that's the you should see the alarm bells going off.
Yeah. And I just wanted to, real quick, Scott,
Sure.
you know, debt elimination doesn't have to be through, a third party consultation of renegotiating your assets, or it doesn't have to be liquidating equity out of your house. It
Yeah.
can be, the equity can, be a good way to leverage, assets and debt. But, there are some other programs,
Yeah.
and I'll give you an example. Debt Free Life really opened my
Oh yeah.
eyes up of, having the best of both worlds, and really have a definite finite point of where you could be out of debt, so you can have long-term planning,
I
because
love
your
that.
your portfolio is an ongoing evolving creature through the life of through your life on this planet. And
Sure.
how you address it every year is so important.
Yep. That debt free life program, the interesting thing, which is a Symmetry proprietary product, the debt free life program is unique because of the way that it's structured. Not only does it rapidly eliminate debt, but it also captures a portion of that debt service as a permanent tax exempt income program later in life. Does both at the same time, which is
Yeah.
why that one's so powerful. Love it. Well, Paul Bein, thank you so much for being with us here today. Thanks for coming on. Any
Thank
last
you.
minute thoughts? Any last comment? Anything?
I know we said a lot.
We did.
Seek alternate, um, advisors, and get
Okay.
different perspectives. Don't always, just like when you have, for medical reasons, get
Right.
second opinions, get someone to look at it, and make sure you
Yeah.
interview your consultant, and that is in line with, the way you think,
That's the good one.
not aligned how they think.
Right. Yep. So, all right. So, last thing is this: we've got a book coming out. The book that we've got is talking about all of this stuff about the different types of investment strategies that we addressed today. And the book is called Kingdom Banking: Legacy by Design, and it's a book about having investment strategies that align with biblical teaching. So it'll be out there on Amazon and Kindle, and you can download it. And you can also, If you really want some personalized instruction, you can come to one of our workshops, and you'll meet somebody like Paul, who'll be teaching the class, and then you can get your financial ducks in a row, make it consistent with what the big man upstairs says. So thanks a lot for being with us today. Bye, everybody.